I fished a lot of lakes. That's not a boast, just a fact. Early mornings, thermos steaming, air sharp as glass, and the hum of a reel in my hand. It's how I've measured time since my wife passed. You learn to hear things others miss when you spend that much time alone with water. The creak of a line under strain. The way geese lift off before a storm. How the fog settles just a little heavier before something strange decides to move underneath it. The lake I'm talking about isn't one you find on your average map. It's called Mirror Lake. Ironic, really, considering what I came to learn about it. Folks in town used to call it that back in the 70s before the state park took over. No official signage anymore. Just a dusty pull-off on Route 9 between two aging cottonwoods and a half-eaten no-dumping sign. I found it through an old man named Cray, who sold bait out of his garage. Said if I wanted peace and real fish, big bastards, he called them, I should give Mirror a shot. Cray had those nicotine-stained fingers and the smell of motor oil that seemed to follow him like a coat. He didn't say much, but when he handed me the folded paper with a scrawled X on it, his eyes lingered too long. "Don't stay past dusk," he said, like he was joking but not. I went the next morning. Mirror Lake is nestled in a pocket of pine that drinks sound. You don't realize how loud your life has been until you step into a place that's forgotten how to echo. The dirt path curves down through a thicket of white ash and maple, then opens onto a view that genuinely stopped me. The lake is wrong. At first glance, it's beautiful in the kind of way that makes you feel guilty for thinking it. Still water, no wind. No bird song either. But what's most striking, what you notice when you first really look, is that the surface doesn't move. Not even ripples. It's like someone poured black oil into a crater and forgot to tell the sky. I remember stepping up to the edge and seeing nothing reflected back at me. No trees, no sky, no me. Just this flat, bottomless sheet. I blinked. Laughed, even. Weird lighting, I told myself. The first time I noticed the reflection wasn't mine, I had already cast the line. Just me and a small, collapsible chair on the shore, coffee steaming beside me. It was still early. Mist curled off the lake like smoke from a cigarette. And the woods behind me were locked in that early morning hush, the kind that feels religious. I leaned forward to check my tackle box, just a glance, and when I looked up, the figure on the surface was still looking down. I sat still. My hands went cold. You ever feel that weird trick of your brain, where something doesn't register as wrong until it already is? I moved again. The reflection lagged behind. Just by a second. Maybe less. I stood. It stood. I waved. It followed. But not precisely. Its hand drifted a little too far left. I backed away and laughed again, like a man trying to convince the trees he wasn't scared. Just tired, I thought. Light tricks, sleep deprivation. A lifetime of bad dreams and worse TV had set my expectations too high for normal, but I kept watching. For days, something about the lake pulled at me. And I went back. Again and again. Every time I fished Mirror Lake, I noticed a new rule, a new behavior. Sometimes my reflection would turn its head a fraction slower than I did. Sometimes its mouth would move when mine didn't. Once I smiled, just to see. And it smiled bigger, wider, more teeth than I remembered showing. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because how do you explain something like that without sounding like you finally lost the thread? The worst part is that, deep down, I didn't feel scared. Not exactly. Not yet. Just observed. That's the only word that feels right. Like someone or something was behind that reflection, watching me wear my face. And over time, I got the feeling it was learning how to wear it better. It's not like I went every day. I told myself that anyway. But the truth is, Mirror Lake got under my skin. Not in a haunted house kind of way, but more like a splinter you can't see that starts to swell. A pressure. A pull. I started waking earlier, sometimes without an alarm. My hands itched until they held the rod. I stopped going to my usual spots. The stocked reservoirs. The nice clean piers with friendly old-timers and trail mix and weather talk. No, I just kept driving out to Route 9, past the turnoffs and gas stations, into that narrowing corridor of trees and forgotten trails, until I was alone with the lake that refused to reflect. The first time I brought binoculars, I don't even know why. Maybe to see if birds ever landed. Maybe to prove there were fish rising and not just things breaking the surface for reasons I didn't want to imagine. I saw no birds, no deer, no bugs skimming the top. Nothing but water and the reflection, which was changing. It didn't look like me anymore. Not exactly. Same clothes, same gear, sure. But the face was just dot off. My jaw didn't sit like that. My neck wasn't that long. And when I tilted my head, it tilted slower, like it was acting, trying to time the beat but missing it by a breath. It started doing things I hadn't. Little things, a blink when I didn't blink. A twitch of the shoulder I didn't feel. Once, I watched it reach up to scratch its neck, and my hand never moved. I dropped the binoculars. They hit the mud with a quiet slap, and I remember looking down hard at my boots, breathing in through my nose, trying to slow the rush. When I looked back up, the reflection was gone. Just water. Black, perfect water. I didn't fish that day. Just sat and watched and tried to feel sane. That night, back home, I dreamed of standing on the lake again, but in the dream it was frozen, a sheet of black ice. I was walking out onto it, and the figure beneath me was swimming, mimicking my movements from below, except it didn't look like me anymore. Its face was blurred, smeared, like paint running in rain, and when I stopped walking, it kept going. Then it smiled. My eyes snapped open at 3:11. I didn't sleep again. It got worse. I tried to stay away for a week. I even drove to a different lake, just a little roadside thing off the interstate. Families barbecuing, kids yelling, and I remember standing on the dock with my tackle box trying to feel the peace I used to get from water, and all I felt was this low-grade itch behind my eyes, like withdrawal, like being watched from behind a mirror. I went back the next morning. That's when I noticed the reflection was closer. Before, it had been faint ghosted, like a shadow under oil. Now it was vivid, skin-toned, detailed. I could see the line of my jaw's stubble, the fading logo on my windbreaker, the tired slouch I carried when I was thinking too hard. But the eyes were wrong. Too wet, too shiny, and they didn't blink when mine did. They didn't seem to blink at all. That same day, I brought a camera, tried to film it. 20 minutes of footage, and when I reviewed it back home, nothing. Just me. No lag, no twitching, no weird smiles. Just the perfectly normal footage of a man fishing beside a very still lake. I checked it again, slower, frame by frame, still nothing. But I remember what I saw. It smiled again that day, and I swear it mouthed something to me. I couldn't hear the words, but the shape of them. I know my own mouth. I know how it forms certain sounds, and the shape it made was clear as glass. Soon, by the second week, I started hearing things. First, it was subtle, a soft slosh, like something heavy moving through shallow water. But when I looked, there were never any ripples, just silence, thick as wool. One morning, I left my tackle box open by mistake. When I reached for my fillet knife, it was already lying next to me on the dirt, out of its slot, blade unsheathed, just waiting. I told myself I forgot I took it out. But I knew I didn't. The air around the lake changed, grew heavier, duller. Sound didn't carry like it should. One time I heard a woodpecker off in the distance and turned to look, and it was perched barely 20 feet from me, hammering at bark like it was trapped inside glass. The sound didn't match the movement. It lagged, like watching a video buffer badly, just off enough to make you uncomfortable. That was the word that began to settle into my bones. Uncomfortable. But it wasn't discomfort like a sore knee or a bad dream. It was deeper. It was an unease in my shape. Like I wasn't lining up with something, like I was being measured. I stopped checking my reflection at home. Stopped using the bathroom mirror entirely. Not out of fear, at least that's what I told myself, but because every time I did, I saw the lake. Behind my head. Behind my eyes. I stopped shaving, stopped turning lights on at night. Even the windows started to feel like too much glass between me and something else. That's when I began to feel it. The lag. Not just at the lake, but in me. In the mirror. In daily life. I'd move my hand to grab a mug, and the sensation of touch would arrive just a hair too late. Like my body was syncing with something that wasn't quite me. I dropped things. Forgot simple words mid-conversation with strangers at the bait shop. Cray, the old man who first told me about Mirror Lake, saw me that Tuesday. "Been fishing?" he asked. I lied, said no, that I'd come in for oil. He leaned in a little too close. "You been back to the Black Water?" he asked. But his voice was low and serious now, not the usual bark. "I told you not to stay long." I asked what he meant. He just shook his head. "Some reflections ain't yours to keep." That night I dreamed again. This time I wasn't at the lake. I was inside it. The darkness closed over my head like a lid. But I could breathe. Somehow I could move too slowly, limbs pulling through syrupy cold. Above me, a shape walked along the surface. Not swimming. Walking. My shape. Wearing my face. I screamed, and bubbles rose. The shape looked down and smiled again, except this time, it wasn't just a smile. It winked. When I woke, the pillow beneath my head was soaked. Not sweat, not drool. Just cold water. The water was on my pillow again the next morning. Same chill. Same smell. Not just water lake water. That faint metallic bite of decayed algae and long dead bark. I held the pillow up to my face and breathed in, slow, afraid, trying not to believe what I already knew. I was bringing it home, not in bottles, not on my boots. It was following me. That day, I didn't bring gear, no rods, no lunch, no excuses. I drove to Mirror Lake with only one thing in mind. End this. Maybe confront it. Maybe speak to it. Maybe just prove that I wasn't crazy. Or that I was. Either way, I needed a line in the sand. The morning was overcast, sky a lid of bruised gray. The dirt path to the lake felt different, narrower, more roots than usual, like the earth had exhaled and bared its bones. When I stepped out into the clearing, I knew something had changed. The lake wasn't still anymore. It was shifting, not with ripples, but with movements. Gentle undulations beneath the surface, like a heartbeat just under skin. Nothing broke the top, but something pressed upward. I stepped to the shore and looked. The reflection stood there, clearer than ever. No blur, no lag, no mimicry now. It just stood, staring at me. And then it did something it had never done before. It turned around, turned its back to me. That was impossible. I stepped back. My hands shook. Behind it, in the reflection, there were trees I didn't recognize. Not the pines and ashes of this shore. These trees were black, gnarled things, with trunks too thin and canopies too wide, like a painting made by someone who'd only heard rumors of forests. And between those trees, shadows moved. The reflection, my reflection, lifted one hand, palm out, as if to say wait. Then it looked over its shoulder, not fully. Just enough for me to see its face, and its eyes were mine, but darker, older. It mouthed something, 3 syllables. I couldn't hear it, but I knew what it was saying. Let me in. My heart slammed, my knees locked. I blinked, just once, and the reflection was gone, not replaced by mine. Gone. Just water now. Just black, perfect water. Then the sound started, a drip, soft, rhythmic, behind me. I turned. There was no rain, no mist, no storm, but my jacket was soaked, as if I'd fallen in, except I hadn't. Had I? I looked at my shoes, mud-slicked, not just from the shore. There were pine needles stuck to the soles, needles I'd seen in that other forest, the one in the reflection. I checked my pockets. One of them bulged slightly. I reached in. My fingers touched something cold and wet. I pulled it out. A smooth black stone, flat and round like a skipping rock. But it was warm now, too warm. It pulsed once in my palm like a muscle. I dropped it. watched it vanish into the water without a sound. Then I ran. I don't remember the path back. I don't remember unlocking the truck or turning the ignition, but I remember the way the trees leaned in as I left, like they'd been holding their breath and were finally exhaling. At home, I locked the doors, drew the curtains, and I didn't sleep, but I did check the mirror just once, and for a full 3 seconds, my reflection didn't show. When it did, it smiled first. I stopped going to the lake completely. Didn't even drive past Route 9 anymore. Couldn't. My hands would shake too bad near that turnoff. I told myself it was over, that the thing in the reflection, whatever it was just a figment of my grief, my loneliness, my imagination bending in on itself from too many quiet years. I blocked the bathroom mirror with an old sheet, got rid of the one in the bedroom, the hallway closet, even the microwave with its damned black glass door. It was the only way I could function, to pretend that nothing was watching. But the truth is, it never needed mirrors. That was just where it learned me. 2 weeks after I stopped fishing, my neighbor said he saw me downtown. Said I didn't wave back when he honked. Said I was standing by the lake supply store, just staring into the window. But I hadn't left the house that day. 3 days later, Cray the bait guy died. Heart attack, they said. Alone in his garage, mid-shave. His razor still clutched in his hand. The local paper ran a small obituary. No mention of Mirror Lake. Why would there be? The morning after his death, I woke up and my boots were wet, soaked through, muddy. I sleep with the door locked, and they were right beside my bed. That same day, I found something else on the floor beside them. A single pine needle, but not from any tree native to these parts. Longer, thinner, black, like the ones from the forest behind the reflection. Then came the whispers. I'd catch them just as I was falling asleep, right before my thoughts dissolved. Soft, not quite words, just the wet hush of breath against glass, like someone exhaling across a window, waiting for it to fog enough to write something. I started dreaming in third person. I watched myself brush my teeth, eat, open the fridge, but not from inside my own eyes, from somewhere else. Behind a pane of dark glass, just far enough that my hands looked like someone else's. Just long enough that the muscles didn't remember what it was like to belong to me. Then one night, I saw myself look up in the dream, not toward the mirror, at me. That's when I stopped sleeping entirely. Now it's just nights and longer nights. And the scratching has started, not at the windows, from inside the mirror. Sometimes soft, sometimes sharp, but always timed with my movements, like it's following along, waiting for a mistake. I tried covering them all again, but the sheets go missing. I tried filming again, but the footage is always corrupted. I tried talking to it once. I whispered, "What do you want?" It smiled, not with my face, but with its own. A perfect twin with just enough extra. Extra teeth. Extra shadow around the eyes. Extra intent. And it said, I've taken to sleeping in the basement now. No mirrors there, no windows. But every morning I wake to the same sound, dripping. And on the cement-wet footprints, one set in, one set out. I am not alone anymore. But I do not know which one of us is real. And neither does the mirror. It just smiles and waits